And Andy, using an OMG assessment, and for those of you who don't know, OMG is an assessment tool to be able to evaluate whether it's an existing team member or a new team member, a candidate. What are some of the competencies that you've seen that have the highest influence on someone who needs to be a hunter? Whether they're using the assessment or not, what are the competencies that they should be looking for as a hiring manager on the hunting side that's going to help that person ensure success?
Okay, that's a good question. So OMG measures what we call 21 core competencies, and they fall into three buckets. One is called the will to sell, and that is how hungry are they to be successful in sales? So that to me is they're willing to stretch, grow, get outside their comfort zone, get uncomfortable, but they're hungry to be successful. The second bucket is what we call sales DNA. I'm going to call that sales beliefs and a kind of a mindset. But those beliefs either support or undermine their ability to execute process and tactics. And the third bucket is tactics. We have process under that also, but it's the tactical thing. So when people say we want a hunter, think about, they usually name the tactical skills. We want them to be able to prospect, like a machine. We want them to get to all the stakeholders. We want them to be able to build relationship, and we want them to be able to consult and qualify and present and close. That's usually the things that you hear. What they never talk about or they don't recognize is, what about the belief system?
Mm-hmm.
So years ago, I owned a software company in the Netherlands. And this was before there was caller ID and all that stuff. I could not get my folks to make a phone call before 8:30 in the morning because their belief was, I'm going to interrupt somebody's sacred coffee time and they'll get mad at me. I'm like, okay. And yet I would pick up the phone at 8:00, make calls, and people would pick up the phone. And they go, well, that's because you're American. I'm like, there's nothing on their phone that says American calling, pick up. Right. And I'm like, if they don't want to pick up, they won't. So it's more what's between your ears. In Sandler world, we call that the head trash, right? So it's the head trash that prevents them from, in this case, hunting a half an hour earlier.
You're making me laugh. I had a client one time, Andy, who she said, look, I don't call anybody between 11:30 and 1 because they're at lunch. And I said, I'm curious, do you take lunch between 11:30 and 1? She goes, yeah, I take lunch between 11. So because you think that you take lunch, everyone else takes lunch at the same amount of time. She goes, well, I mean, maybe. I said,
Yes.
We run an experiment. 30 days later, she comes to me and she goes, you've bought me back about almost a full day of productivity because she now has an hour and a half a day, 5 days a week that she didn't have before because she had blocked that off. And I think that's a great example of head trash, one of my favorite terms. And so when you're hunting, you got to have that right mindset. We were even talking before we started the podcast today of abundance. I mean, that's a phenomenally good mindset to have. Do you have a mindset of scarcity or abundance?
Yes.
If you have a mindset of abundance, when you prospect, you're going to you're going to do your work, but at some point you're going to, move on to somebody else because the world is full of good prospects. You just got to go find them. And that's an abundance mindset.
Yeah. And it's, so when most people are saying, hey, I need to hire a hunter, they're going, will they hunt? Well, okay, let's go back to interviewing. They'll say they'll hunt. An assessment will help sort fact from fiction, whether they can or will or can. And then with your structured interview, you're asking for evidence of hunting. My biggest client came from a cold call to a CEO at 7:00 on a Friday night.
But Andy, nobody picks up the phone at 7:00 on a Friday night.
CEOs do because they're still working and they're busy, and nobody's there to screen out the call.
That's right.
And I was training them 3 weeks ago. I mean, this is his fourth company. And somebody brought up, well, do you still prospect? And then he piped up and said, well, let me tell you how we met.
Yeah.